Hi everyone, I'm Shaylin here with Reedsy. Today we're going to be running through 10 simple steps to edit a novel. Going into editing or revising a novel can seem like a really overwhelming task, especially if you've just completed your first novel. You might not have no idea how to go about the editing process. Writing a first draft can feel pretty self-explanatory. You just sit down and write the words, but how do you even begin to go about editing? So today I'm going to break down the editing process into 10 really simple steps that you can follow if you're not sure how to approach editing your novel. Step number 1, organize your materials. I think a really important first step before you actually start working in the draft is to organize all of your materials. If you were writing from an outline or creating an outline as you were writing, like an evolving outline, update it so it actually aligns with what's in your story. If you've taken notes, organize them. Organize all of your materials so everything is really clear and easy to work with. Editing can get overwhelming, and a good way to mitigate that is to just stay really organized so all your information about the project is really clear and it's easy to get a really clear overview of the material in your book and the changes you want to make. I definitely recommend having some kind of overview or breakdown of all the chapters and scenes in your book so you can have a bird's eye view of your story and more clearly note places you want to make changes. Step number 2, identify the problems. Now this is obviously the challenging part, right? This is going to be different for every single book, but here are a few things you can ask yourself. First of all, is there anything that feels underdeveloped or unconvincing? Anything in the story that you kind of just threw together and feel needs more work put into it to feel like an actual convincing solution? Whether this is background detail that needs more research or a plot development that's really thinly held together. You also want to look for any places where the plot development is over-convoluted, where you can simplify a really complex series of events that maybe is a little jumbled and crowded into a simple series of events that will actually have more tension because it's a lot punchier. Or similarly, do you have any plot developments that feel really underdeveloped? Things that just kind of happen without any explanation, the consequences aren't played out, there's no build-up. As you've written, you may have learned more about your character. So is there anything the character does that is contradictory to how you've developed them? Do you need to tweak their behavior or dialogue, or do you need to go put more character development work onto the page? Are there any plot holes or inconsistencies? How about scenes or plot developments that contradict the main theme of your book? If you have anything that contradicts your book's theme, then your book's theme won't really hold together very strongly because it's not being supported by what actually happens. Every book has its own issues, so follow your gut and also get outside feedback to help. Personally, I like to start editing by addressing the problems I can identify myself and then get outside feedback, but it all depends on where you're at and whether you feel you need help to identify problems or not. You're going to want to get feedback at some point, so it's just up to you when and how you get that feedback. Personally, I like to work with the book a bit myself, so it's as clean as I can make it before I get feedback from other people. Tip number 3, make a revision plan with actionable solutions. Since you have organized material and notes and you've identified the problems in your book, now's the time to bring those two things together in order to create a revision plan, which is essentially just an outline for your revisions. Personally, the way that I like to do this is I like to go through my outline, so my list of all the chapters and scenes in my book, and I like to note the changes that I want to make to every specific scene. I like to begin by translating the list of problems that I've identified to a list of solutions. So if I have a problem, how am I going to address it in the plot? Then I like to go through my outline, so my list of chapters and scenes, and note down changes that I want to make to specific scenes. I think it's really important here to focus on noting down solutions rather than leaving a note that just says change this, make this better, or fix this problem. Really think about how you want to fix that problem. You'll find that if you don't write down solutions, you just write down problems, when you get to that scene that you want to edit, you'll feel a little stuck. You won't really know how to proceed because you haven't provided yourself a solution. So while you're in the mindset of really thinking about your book in the global sense and all the problems and how you want to fix it, try to think about solutions and note down how that's going to relate to specific scenes. Step number 4, edit in the least overwhelming way possible. Now, the most common way that we're taught to edit is big to small. So this is the idea that you're going to start with all of your big edits, so make any large changes to pacing or structure, adding chapters, cutting chapters, moving scenes, large things that you're going to shuffle around, and then go down to medium edits, so specific edits to scenes, working on the scene level, and then down to line edits, so doing a thorough line edit and editing the sentence level. This works for a lot of people. Personally, it's actually not how I like to edit. I find that very overwhelming because I find it's very unnatural for my brain to try and separate all these different types of edits. So I like to do what I call chronological edits. So I start at chapter 1 and I make big, medium, and small edits all at once. This is just going to depend on you and what you find works for you. The reason most people like to leave their small edits or line edits until the end, it is a lot of work. They don't want to line edit scenes that they might end up cutting later, and that makes a lot of sense. Personally though, for me, it doesn't make sense to separate these things. I think for me, it's all very interconnected. So I like to just work through my book linearly and make all sorts of changes all at once. Do whatever would work best for you. Editing can be really overwhelming, so you want to take the approach that feels most intuitive for you. Step number 5, go back and address lingering problems. It's kind of impossible to fix everything on just one draft. Doing your initial round of editing, you'll certainly improve the book a lot, but there may be some things that you just weren't able to address, or things that you didn't notice were issues until you'd done that passive edit. That's okay. Now it's the time to go back and start addressing lingering issues. You'll have a cleaner manuscript now, so it'll be less overwhelming. But after you've done your first major round of editing, see if there's anything lingering, things that you're still not happy with, and start doing more fine-tuning. Step number 6, take space from the project. It's really important to let your project rest at some point. Just take a break from it, maybe work on something else, take a break from writing. It's up to you. This is important, first of all, so you don't get burnt out. You know, just working on the same book over and over and over can really burn you out on the project. It can make you kind of start to hate it sometimes, but it's also really important so that you can come back to it with fresh eyes. When you read something over and over and over, you kind of just disconnect from it. I did a bunch of rounds of editing on my manuscript a year ago, and when I came back to edit it just a month ago, I cut like 15,000 words from the manuscript. I thought I had fully edited this manuscript and there was nothing that could be cut. But because I'd read the sentences so many times, I'd read the book so many times, it was just impossible for me to separate certain things that just didn't need to be there. But when I came back and I read it with really fresh eyes, because I hadn't looked at the book in so long, a lot of things jumped out to me as unnecessary. So taking a break from the book, even several months, can be really, really beneficial so you don't get burned out on the project. And so you can edit it more like a reader would, with fresh eyes, where you can actually spot, especially those smaller, finer details that are really hard to spot if you've just been working on the project nonstop for months. Step number 7, keep cutting or condensing anything you can. As you edit, look for anything that just isn't necessary, isn't pulling its weight. Condense your book as much as possible. The more condensed your book is, the more tension there will be. The more we draw a plot out, the more we will lose tension as tension starts to leak out of the plot development. If you're going a traditional publishing route, your book will be more appealing to editors and agents if it has a more condensed word count. Within industry standard word counts, it's not too long, it's not too baggy. So do really thorough cuts, both on the sentence level, rearranging sentences to cut extraneous words, cutting extraneous paragraphs or beats from scenes, as well as cutting just extraneous whole scenes that don't really do anything. There may be multiple scenes that kind of serve the same purpose that you could just condense into one. Once you get into the later stage of edits, you've solved a lot of the problems. It'll become really apparent now, scenes that just don't contribute anything. Maybe they did at one point, but at this point they aren't really serving you, and so you want to just cut anything extraneous, and that will really tighten up the plot and the pacing. Number 8, do multiple drafts. You want to keep doing multiple drafts. As you do more drafts, you can focus on things like doing thorough line edits. As you get later into your book's development, you'll probably want to do several rounds of just line edits. This really helps you fine-tune your book, polish your voice, cut extraneous words. It's a really, really important part of editing a book, and I definitely would not recommend skipping it. Thorough line edits are what really take a book to that next level of polish. They make it feel super clean, super intentional, and so it's a really, really important part of editing a book to do multiple rounds of thorough line edits. Step number 9, get outside feedback. I've left this until the end because it kind of depends for you where in your writing process you want to get feedback. For most people will want to get feedback maybe throughout the editing process, but it's really up to you. There are different ways of getting feedback. I think it's great to work with one or several critique partners, people you exchange work with and can build a really trusting critiquing relationship with. Some people employ beta readers, which is essentially a larger group of readers, like a test audience. You may have a workshop. However it is, it's really important to foster ongoing creative critiquing relationships, people that you can turn to when you need to get feedback on your work. And that leads to step number 10, hire a professional. If you are self-publishing, this is an absolute must. You definitely want to hire a professional editor because you do not want to publish a book that has not been professionally edited. There are multiple different types of professional editing that address different levels and aspects of a story. from developmental editing to copy editing to proofreading. I'll leave a link below to another video on the different types of editing. If you are planning to traditionally publish, working with a professional editor is not a must. You will work with professional editors throughout the traditional publishing process, so you don't have to hire one yourself. If you do feel like that is something you need in order to get your book ready to query, it is still an option, and it is still something that you can do if you feel like that's the type of feedback that would best benefit you. If you are looking to hire a professional editor, Reedsy is a marketplace where you can hire different editing professionals, so you can learn more about that on our website linked below. So those are 10 straightforward, though maybe not so easy in application, tips for how to edit a novel. Thank you so much for watching. Remember to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any new videos from us. We've got new writing, editing, and publishing tips every Tuesday and Friday. Until next time, bye.